Ladies and gentlemen, round 13 of the AFL has come and gone, and yet again, interesting and more or less career-defining victories for a lot of these teams, and establishing their way into a chance to get into finals footy is coming ever so closer. These games here really defined a lot of these teams and gave them a really good chance to get into the top 8 of the AFL. Now let's go through all of the round 13 results right now. What's up, everybody? It's the Aidan Sports Show. Welcome back to another video. This is going to be an AFL Round 13 reaction and results video where we go through all of the games of Round 13 of the AFL and give my honest and true match reactions and results, where we go through the predictions that I made in a previous video and we'll see how many I got right and how many I got wrong. But before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Aidan Sports Show YouTube channel. Turn notifications on. Let me know in the comments below. Do you guys think that this round was the most significant round of the entire AFL so far? And do you think that some of these teams that did end up winning will be those teams that will make the 8 in the AFL? This round is probably the most significant out of them all because there were some career-defining games for some teams and they've truly gotten over the line and made their claim and actually given themselves a fighting chance to put themselves into the top 8. And some of these teams still have a game to play within their own fixtures. They still have a game to play above a lot of teams. It's very interesting to see where things go. But let's get on to the first game of the episode. Gold Coast versus Carlton. Big game here. I predicted Carlton to win and Carlton won in fine fashion. Now again, Gold Coast were played off the park the entire game. This was one of the games I watched and Gold Coast were not great at any level of today's game. In a game you expected to be close and tight and really phenomenal, Gold Coast did not show up. And to be fair, Carlton weren't especially great in front of goal today. They had 18 behinds to their 7 goals and a lot of them were open shots. So whatever you want to say about Carlton, they were not the final product today. They were not the best that they've been all season, but somehow they managed to get their win and they placed themselves in a very good position where they could even make a chance to get into the 8 as well. A team that no one expected to fight for it is there and they're very close to it as well. They can touch it. Let's see what happens with Carlton. They do have a very tough fixture list going ahead into the next week, so it's going to be very interesting to see where Carlton go from here. Gold Coast, it just wasn't good enough. That's all I can say about Gold Coast. We're going to move on from them. I still think they've had a fantastic season. No matter how many games they lose from here on in, they've truly really outdone themselves, and I'm very happy with their progress. Next game, Western Bulldogs versus Melbourne. I predicted Melbourne to win this game. First loss on the board as Western Bulldogs were fine victors indeed. Western Bulldogs, honestly, I think both teams weren't really great today. Both midfields were dreadful. Turnovers all around the place. But I think the difference in this game was definitely the finishing from Western Bulldogs. 12 goals to 8 behinds to Melbourne, 7 goals and 10 behinds. Melbourne were extremely wasteful in their 50, and it's been an ongoing story for a long time with Melbourne, but finally when we feel like we've turned the leaf, we end up going back to old habits, old routines, and that's what happens when you have a young team. You're always going to go back to those old habits eventually. You need to learn how to outgrow those habits and find good habits that you could lean back on. And unfortunately today was not a perfect example of that. Now, is the Melbourne's dream of making the top 8 over? Absolutely not. I believe they sit 9th and Western Bulldogs has taken their spot in 8th. Fair play to Western Bulldogs. Western Bulldogs counter-attacking from our 50 to their 50 was what killed us in the end. And they did extremely well to get a lot of those opportunities from our own demises. So fair enough for Western Bulldogs. It was a good game. Honestly, the score really doesn't justify how well both teams played. To be honest, it wasn't that great of a game, but both teams in the end are quality teams and they're both fighting for the same position. And now Western Bulldogs do have the better chance, but Melbourne are still well and truly in the fight with one game advantage over a lot of the teams in the 8 already. There's still a chance for Melbourne, but Western Bulldogs were fine winners today, well deserved. In a game where you don't know, you pick the team that you like the most, and unfortunately it backfired on me this time. We're going to go and fight again next week, the Demons, and it's going to be a very tough one. But going on to the next game, Hawthorn versus Port Adelaide. I predicted Port Adelaide to win this game, and Port Adelaide won by 10 points. Now, this game was a game of two halves. In the first half, it was all Hawthorn. Hawthorn were dominant in the first quarter, and they really kept things going in the second, but Port Adelaide seemed to find the will to win. It was a fantastic display, and these are one of those things where if you have more shots on goal, you're more likely to win the game. Now, the goals were even with Hawthorn and Port. Both had 9 goals apiece, but the points really put Port Adelaide over the line in this game. Port Adelaide weren't great. I'm sure they know it too. They're a top club. They should know when they play great or not. And this was not a great game from them. But that was an important victory because I believe they didn't have a great outing last week. And this was a comeback week. And they did very, very well. Not against a good side, you have to say. But a win is a win. And I think they'll have to take that and move on. And hopefully perform better next week. It's going to be another bounce back week for Port Adelaide. It just wasn't great, and I think Hawthorn really did a lot better than people expected. 9 goals to 4 behinds. Usually that'd win you the game, but unfortunately not to be this time. Next game, Richmond versus Essendon in a fine game, if I do say so myself. Essendon were extremely clinical. However, Richmond were the winners, and I predicted Richmond to win. Again, Richmond were the all-around better team. I think the midfield was sensational. Richmond are always a team that loves to press and loves to create opportunities, and the opportunities, again, is what got them the victory. They were winners by 11 points, or 12 points, actually. 12 points. They had 13 behinds and 10 goals to Essendon's 10 goals and 1 behind. So Essendon were clinical, but however, they just didn't seem to have enough shots on the scoreboard, and that was their own demise. You can't say Essendon played poorly. You can't. How can someone score 10 goals and 1 behind and say that they played poorly? I just don't think that they did. And in the end, it was a good week for them. It really, really was, Richmond. And it was a good week for Essendon as well in a loss. Sometimes there are victories in defeat. I say it every week. And Essendon will probably have that feeling that, yeah, they lost, but there was a few victories in this loss. They're an injury-rated team, and they still managed to keep up with one of the best in the competition. I don't think any Essendon fan will be too upset with that loss. Going into the next game, Fremantle versus Essendon. I predicted Fremantle to win this game, and they won in flying colours. 50-19 was the score. Essendon was so poor. Not Essendon, Sydney. Sydney was so poor. Sydney were tremendously poor. I don't know what else I could say about their team, but they were just shockingly bad. 19 points. I'm not sure what the conditions were, but in the end, Fremantle's had 50 points. So I don't know what the excuse is going to be. I'm not going to talk about this game very, very much. I definitely didn't watch it because there were two of the bottom teams fighting each other. And in my opinion, the better team won. I think Fremantle were far and away the better team, and they proved it. And there you go, man. Well and truly deserved winners. Next game, Geelong versus Adelaide. Another game I don't really need to go much into, but Adelaide really did respectable in this game. Only losing by 28 points is not too bad for a team that hasn't won a game all season. The scoreline was 37-65. I obviously predicted Geelong to win. Not really much to go into this game. To be honest, I don't know if there was a person out there that picked Adelaide. I'm gonna have to move on from that one as well. I always like to bash Adelaide for how poor they've played. I don't want to do it anymore because honestly, it just feels like I'm beating a dead horse at this point. I'm just gonna leave them be, leave them alone. Geelong were great, and they'll deserve winners. Next game, Brisbane versus St Kilda. Now, I predicted Brisbane to win this game, and Brisbane won in a very close game that arguably you could say they shouldn't have won. 50-48 was the scoreline. However, Brisbane should not be winning a game with 6 goals and 14 behinds. 14 behinds. Oh man, it seems like every single team did not have their kicking boots on this week. Or the majority of the games have more than 10 behinds behind their name. For one of the teams at least. I couldn't believe that. I can't believe they won this game. And I'm very happy that they did. Of course I am, because I end up getting a victory under my belt as well. But realistically, they shouldn't have won this game. And St Kilda probably feel hard done by, and they're going to have to go out and dominate next week. That's the kind of situation that they're in after a loss like that. That's going to really get at them. It's going to eat away at them until they have the chance to respond. That's the type of loss that it was for them, because they probably should have won. It's the worst feeling when you know you should have won a game and you lost it. It is the worst feeling in the world, and I'm sure they'll have to respond very viciously next week. Next up, West Coast versus the GWS Giants. No real unpredictability here. I predicted West Coast to win, and West Coast won in flying colours as well, 61-49. Very close game. Both teams played well, but in the end, West Coast just a little bit too much for the Giants, who are very, very close to not making the 8. This was a must-win game for them, as I said before, and they did not win. I didn't see how they were going to win, but they put up a really good fight. Obviously, they're going to have to win every game from here on in if they're going to make the 8. It's tough. It's going to be tough because there's a bunch of teams fighting for that position. They are definitely not one of the favourites to win it. But you have to say, a team of the quality of the Giants, even if there are a few injuries to their name, should be good enough to make the 8. And I would not be surprised if they end up doing it, but you need to keep your eyes out on them, because if they end up not making the 8, they are probably going to be the biggest disappointments in the AFL this season. It's as simple as that. Last but not least, Collingwood versus North Melbourne. I predicted Collingwood to win, and Collingwood did win by 30 points, 10 goals, 5 goals, 5. A pretty decent performance from Collingwood, I do have to say. They weren't the greatest. Again, there's always been struggles with Collingwood over the last few weeks. They didn't verse a quality side in North Melbourne, but in the end of the day, a victory is a victory, and this will hopefully give them momentum to maintain their position within the 8 and allow some of their players to give them time to come back and compete. Hopefully things go well for Collingwood. They're a decent team. They are a decent team, but they've been under a lot of scrutiny this season. So sometimes the pressure really gets to people, especially people that are inexperienced, which a lot of Collingwood players that are currently playing on that team are. They're not experienced and they don't really match the system. So beating North Melbourne's not really a big feat for them. It's all would have been expected. I think next week against Carlton will definitely be their biggest test for the remainder of the season, because if they lose to Carlton, they're in serious jeopardy of falling out. So it's going to be up to what Collingwood decide to do next week. That's going to be probably the biggest game of the round next week, Collingwood and Carlton. It's always a big game, and I assume that it's going to be no less the same for next week. And those are the predictions that I got right and got wrong at the bottom of the screen. Now, as I said before, after calculating it with my friend as well, we've calculated all of them every week, and the final results for the entire season of my predictions are going to be placed now. Those are my current rankings of predictions I've gotten right and I've gotten wrong. It's very incredible stuff. I really, really have done myself, I honestly feel. Because this is my first year, I'm not really accustomed to learning other teams, really, because I've been more of a one-man team, just focusing on Melbourne and no one else. So this was a big step for me to do something like this. And I've done extremely well, if I do say so myself. At least for my standings, I thought I've overachieved. Let me know what you guys think as well. I'm sure a bunch of people have had better records than what I have, and that's fair. And honestly, fair play to you, but I just feel like for someone of my capabilities, my level, it's not really a great level of AFL knowledge that I have. I have to admit, I'm not well educated in terms of other teams except for my own. But you need to look, but at least for me, I need to look at how to get better. And doing this has really made my level of teams and understanding of teams increase, even by the slightest. And that's positive news, man. Learning is the most important thing. So here's the ladder now. What do you guys think of the ladder? Still 9, 10, 11. There are still a bunch of teams that could easily make the 8 if they do win the remainder of their games. So don't sleep on those teams that are still fighting. There is still a good chance for a lot of them. Going on to the winners and the losers of the week. This was a very tough one, because the two winners I had in mind was Western Bulldogs and Fremantle, and I think I'm going to give it to the Western Bulldogs, because this was definitely a must-win game for them. If they ended up losing this game, it's a very hard climb back with 4 games left, and they've had a game above a lot of teams to go and reach that top 8. It would have been really tough for them. So in a must-win game on their season, they ended up doing extremely well. In my opinion, they're the winners of the round. Congratulations to Western Bulldogs fans and competitors on keeping your season alive for a long period of time. And there's still hope for them to make the top 8. They are currently in the 8. They are 8th, and they rightfully deserve to be there. The losers of the week is fairly straightforward for me. Once again, it's the Sydney Swans. Scoring 19 against a team that's pretty much a decent or similar level to you, even though arguably Fremantle are a better side, it's clear and it's night and day now that they're the better side. But when coming into this, Sydney had a very good week, and they still ended up just getting smashed. So they are 100% the losers of the round. I feel like this is the third or fourth time I put them as losers of the round. I believe they're more losers of the round than Adelaide, who haven't won a game. But Adelaide seems like they put up better fights when they're versing teams above them. They actually try a little bit harder. I don't know what the case is with Sydney, but they've really done piss poor this week. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the Aidan Sports Show YouTube channel. Have a wonderful day. Take care and peace.